What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hobby. My mic's not muted, right?
You're on. You're live.
I'll restart because I feel like I've messed. It's really been messed up the past couple weeks. I've been trying this, but okay. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hobby Hotline. This is episode 296, coming up on episode 300, which is pretty crazy. My debut was actually on episode 100, so that should tell you how long ago that was. Our co-host today, we've got Rich Klein and Horatio. Start with you, Rich. How are we doing this week?
We're doing just fine. We have a great hobby. You know, some weeks are bad, some weeks are good. We got a kick-butt week in hobby, in mostly positive hobby stories.
Yeah, and I always a good week whenever stuff like that happens. Horatio, same question to you. How's your week been?
Week's been great. We did this 2 weeks ago, guys. It was the three of us. So
yeah, that's right.
We're back together 2 weeks later. So let's see how it goes.
Love that. Want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat coming in. We've got Mad City Brew. Good morning. What's up, everybody? Definitely leave us your comments of where you're watching the show. That's always fun for me. I always enjoy seeing where everybody's watching the show from. I know I want to give a shout out to. I should have had this ready. I don't know where it is.
Shout out to Rex and his two stores.
That's right. That's what it is. That's I was looking for the graphic. I couldn't find the graphic, but yeah, you saved me there, Rich. It was, yeah. Shout out to Rex at the Rich. Actually, you go ahead. You do because you probably know
Rex and his two sports card shows that always put us on the big store, and we're always very appreciative. And we're always very appreciative for his contributions to the chat. And we're also, as I mentioned, we had a really busy news week. Adam, please post the link to call in and keep that rolling as a screen. And also, if there's topics you want us to talk about, we have our list of topics, but we're not limited to what we're talking about. If you have topics you want us to talk about, go ahead. But I will also just mention one thing before we start the topic. There are rumors in the hobby that eBay is buying Golden. Until that happens, we can talk about what we think the effects are, but I'd rather actually talk about news. That's not yet news. When that becomes news, we will discuss it, but not right now.
Right, definitely. Yeah, it's obviously, I think speculation in this hobby, I think, has been pretty rampant over the past couple of years with, rumors of people buying companies and all of these things. Obviously we don't know for sure what's going to happen. I think that's maybe one of the cool parts, at least for me with sports cards, is I've been kept on my toes at least. You never know when, for example, like that Topps Fanatics sale happened at like 10 p.m. one random night in the middle of the winter last year. So it's kind of like that within just cards in general in the industry. It's definitely, I guess it's good for content creators. It's interesting, but for some people, it's the business side of it. I think that goes a little bit crazy. We actually are going to start out here with potentially I think one of the biggest sports card related stories of the year for sure. It's going to be the one and only Bo over at A Million Cubs hit his 1 millionth card, and it's a monument. I don't know. I get maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it seems like a pretty monumentous moment within sports cards. Like Bo, phenomenal guy, has been running this Million Cubs account for however many years. And now he finally, there he is right now. Perfect. Actually, hold on 1 second. Let me just bring him in here. What up, Bo? How we doing?
Hey, what's up?
Perfect. His spidey senses must have been tingling a little bit when for some reason he heard me talking about
He may have had a little hint to call in.
Yeah, so like I said, a phenomenal moment for sports cards in general. Like, couldn't have happened to a better guy, obviously, Bo. So since you're here, I'll kick it to you first. What are I'm sure you've been overwhelmed with messages and stuff like that. So what's the last 48 hours been like for you?
Oh man, it's been a whirlwind, and I was talking this morning on my YouTube show that my emotions, I had so many emotions running through leading up to yesterday's event that it was probably a good thing, because I was nervous, I was anxious, I was excited. I didn't really know what the day. Most of the day yesterday was a surprise. I knew I was throwing out the first pitch. I knew I was getting my 1 millionth card. Didn't know what it was going to be. Didn't know what all the day would entail. So I was just kind of living in the moment and going with the flow. And my initial plan to get the 1 millionth card was going to be at the National, sometime at the National, I was going to go in with my 999,999 count, and then I'm going to go buy a card, and that's going to be my millionth card. Topps reached out to me, said, hey, we want to do something special, and I was all about that. So made it beyond my wildest dreams of what happened yesterday.
Yeah, I love that. And so, for you, when you started on this journey, like, is this what you like? It's crazy to think. I would imagine it's crazy to think back to like when you first started everything and you first started on social media and everything. And it's like a million cards. I mean, maybe some people might not think it was going to take as long. Like, did you imagine that it was gonna be as quick as, or not as quick, but imagine it was gonna come up as quick as maybe you thought? Or what were your like thoughts when you originally started versus now, I guess, is maybe the question.
When I think when I first started, I thought it might be like a 10 to 20 year type of journey, but it really took off right away. I started it in December of 2017, created a Twitter account, and like right from the get-go, like there were people, and I had done team trades like over the last 30 years. I've done team trades off and on to various team collectors. So I knew there was a market for commons, even junk wax commons, if you trade them to team collectors. So the outpouring of support from the very beginning, it really took off. In that first year, I think I accumulated 125,000 or something to that effect. Started doing the math. I'm like, okay, this might be, and I felt that the longer it went, the closer I got, the more cards the more people knew about it, more people were willing to trade, sell, send cards in. So I had a feeling that 125,000 might be the low bar of an annual accumulation of Cubs cards. So I think as I got into it, like the second year, I'm like, this is probably going to be a 5 to 7 year journey. And it and it probably could have been 5.5 years, 5 years, but I really slowed down here in the last year and a half because I have so many 1987 Topps cards, and it's like, I don't need any more. So I was a little more selective. I basically stopped trading about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, just because of the time consumption it was. I was very selective with what I was willing to trade, what I wanted back in trade. And I'd found some dealers that, last year at the National at Rosemont, I think I picked up like 50,000 Cubs cards from a couple different dealers. So I was able to find those people that were able to boost that number quite a bit in one foul swoop.
Nice. Yeah, that's, like I said, the journey and the to set out that you're going to do it and then actually, come this far, I think is like super impressive. And I mean, I'm sure you've been thinking about it for a while. Like, what's, now that you've hit 1 million, like, do you have to change your Twitter account name, or like, are you going to keep it 1 million Cubs, or what's next for everything? I mean, for you, for the Twitter account, what do you got? Like, do you really have are you still soaking in the moment? You haven't really thought about what's next.
So my brand is a reality. Up until now, it's just been a dream, right? It's been a goal. I'm 1 million Cubs, but I didn't have 1 million Cubs. Now I have 1 million Cubs. So now I don't feel like I'm lying to the public, right?
Right.
So the next step is organization, because a lot of the stuff I tried from the very beginning, I tried to get them organized. I had a spreadsheet. I went to trading card database. And when I would get 3,000 cards in a mail day, I was getting that happened, 3,000 today, 100 tomorrow, 50 the next day, and 1,000 the next day. It adds up, and they were coming in faster than what I could actually get them cataloged. So then I just kind of, throughout most of this, I kind of gave up the whole sorting and organizing. And I just recently wiped my trading card database account clean to start fresh because I had lost track of what was logged, what wasn't logged. And I've got about 9,000, I think, logged on TCDB total. And I have 990,000 more to go. And it's going to take a lot longer, I think, than 6.5 years to get the next step of this project completed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to kick it to my two co-hosts. I'll let them ask you two questions, and then we'll let you go. I'm imagining for whatever reason, a picture just popped into my head of you like diving into all the cards like Scrooge McDuck, the million cards, putting them in a bathtub and taking a dive. But yeah, so first, Rich, I'll kick it to you. Do you have a question for Bo?
I have a lot of questions for Bo, but here's
We'll
the one.
limit it. We got one. We'll limit it to one or two.
Here's the one I'm
Limit it to
thinking about. Here's the one I'm thinking about. I'll ask him the others in his daily chat at another point. When he took the mound, did he suddenly realize, staring into the triple decker, double decker at Wrigley Field, that he was on the same place, where the Cubs won World Series, where people had pitched no-hitters like Kenny Holtzman, where, all this stuff of his favorite team has taken place for more than 100 years. And I know you can't really talk about the emotions, but I'm watching that smile on your face. Did you feel like you were 8 years old again and living your childhood dream?
Absolutely. It was, it's hard to put into words, but just, being out there, and I think I didn't want to think all those things because that would put more pressure. And I haven't thrown a baseball in 20 years. And I think I was just more focused on throwing the baseball and not bouncing it in the dirt. That's what everybody told me, like aim high. Jordan Wicks in the dugout. I said, what's your tip? I haven't thrown a baseball in a while. He said, aim high, because it's always going to be low. It's always going to go lower than where you aim. So I think I aimed a little too high. And I don't think there's video out there of the actual – it's not 50 cent bad. It didn't go at a 90-degree angle, but it went high. If Clark the Cub was a little faster, if he was like Adley Rushman, he probably he would have caught it, but he didn't. So – but
yeah.
no, it was it was surreal. Like I was able to spend about an hour and a half on the field, watching the Dodgers take in field, and Mookie Betts is right there in front of me, and I peered into the dugout, and I'm like, I'm thinking like, man, I wish I could go in the dugout. And all of a sudden, Jim, who's part of the player relations staff with the Cubs, grabbed me and he's like, hey, come on down. And Jordan Wicks was in the dugout, so I was able to chat with him.
Nice.
In the dugout, and Marquee Network's doing their pregame like right next to me. It's like it's just like all surreal at this moment. Like, wow, this is real. I'm here.
Yeah. I love that. And just maybe this is an exclusive here. If I ever get the chance to throw out the first pitch, I will be doing research on the worst ones, and I'm planning on trying to do the worst first pitch of all time. I got to figure out exactly how to do it, but that's my plan. So if I ever get to throw out the first pitch, just know that you, all three, and then all of the, the 50 people listening, just know that I did it on purpose when I throw one of the worst first pitches of all time.
I like that strategy. That's a good strategy, because then you could say I meant to do it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So here's the thing. I mean, you plan, you do it, and then you go viral, and then you're like, oh, and then you get the redemption, then you get to do it again. I mean, it's a whole, like I said, it's a whole plan here. Horatio, same kind of question to you. What do you got for Bo as we got him here for a little bit longer?
Hey, Bo, how are you? Nice to meet you, man.
What's up, man? Yeah, good to meet you.
No, I think it was just a great moment for card collectors, man. That you were recognized by the Cubs, and that Topps was kind of have the foresight to honor you that way. I think I saw a post of yours on Twitter maybe a couple weeks ago that people don't have any idea of what a million cards actually looks like. I think that might have been you, and like we can't fathom what a million cards looks like. Like I might have a couple thousand cards in my collection. I'm like overwhelmed with the boxes. So my question is, what does a million cards look like?
It's so it takes up about 600 square feet in a storage room in my basement, and to some it may be like you could say it's like what 205,000 count boxes, and that seems like well that's not much, but we were talking. I think somebody had mentioned in my chat this morning about binders, and it would be like 1,200 or 1,500 binders with 800 cards, and it's okay. Fill a binder with 800 cards, and it's like, hey, this is a lot of cards, and then you fill second and third, and so those smaller numbers don't seem like much, but then like say you have 20 binders with 800 cards on your shelf, you still have to fill another 1,230 binders, and you've got 20 already. Like so that like really, because I always hear the 200, 5,000 count boxes, and that just to me it's like, oh, it's a whole bunch of boxes, but then the whole binder Like that really opened my eyes to what that is. And so 2.5 by 3.5, a standard card. If you lay those end over end, it spans over 55 miles. So it'd be like
Wow.
55 miles of baseball cards on the street.
That's
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah, that is a lot. That's a lot of cards. And Bo, like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're a busy man here now because you got that millionth card, and now you're like famous basically. You're getting posted by Tops. Maybe you'll be in the influencer set next year potentially. That would be pretty cool. Any other parting words before we kind of move on topics here from you, Bo?
No, just thanks for having me on, and I'll be tuning in for the rest of the show. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Congrats on the million.
Awesome. That's completely awesome.
Yeah, that is like I said, I think when we're looking at just overall sports card stories, I think it's probably one of the stories of the year, just from somebody who has been in this community for so long, and to be able to do such a feat, I think is super impressive. So we are going to be transitioning from that over to I don't know if any of you caught the games last night. We have the start of the Final Four for March Madness. First, we have, I think, a really good matchup, and I think a very underrated matchup in the national championship for the women. I think it's today. We have the men's Final Four as well playing, but we'll start out with the women here. South Carolina, undefeated, super insanely good. Unfortunately, Aaliyah Boston was the first overall pick last year, was on South Carolina, wasn't able to win that championship. I know they were talking about that on the broadcast a little bit. And then, Iowa, Caitlin Clark. It is unfortunate that Paige Beckers and UConn had to take the L against Iowa, because I would have loved to see some sort of national championship with those two teams. But I think South Carolina is definitely, I believe they were the number one overall team in the tournament. With Caitlin Clark, there's been tons of Caitlin Clark stuff that has come out. So Horatio, I'll start with you. From a card perspective, how would you grade how Topps has done this March Madness with some of the NIL cards?
I think that they've done great. I think they've with the Topps Now cards that they've released, with a lot of it centered around Caitlin Clark, they're capitalizing on women's sports, and I think that they should. Especially this Final Four. Like, this Final Four is really special just because of the teams and the players involved. South Carolina is now the new UConn of sorts. UConn is still UConn, and Iowa's got that, the it factor with Caitlin Clark. And I might be in the minority here, but I watched the game yesterday, and I've watched Caitlin Clark dominate, but she really struggled yesterday. Yeah. And I don't know if you watched the game, but I don't think that she's the best prospect, man. Like the UConn guard, Nika Mule, so impressive the way she was guarding her the entire game. I think she played her way into the draft, and so I say this, like, Caitlin Clark's gonna face defenders just as good as Nika Mule in the WNBA. I don't know that she's necessarily the most polished draft prospect after watching that game. I could be in the minority. I could be crazy. I don't know. So I think that I'd be careful, right? Like, throwing all my money into the Caitlin Clark bandwagon, as I would be with any other athlete. And Topps is capitalizing on it. They've done what they should do with it. That would be my little kind of tidbit from what I saw last night. And I'm looking forward to the final. I think it's gonna be great. I don't think anybody can beat South Carolina. I think that team is just
that's
amazing athletes.
They're like insane. Like I think it's going to be. I actually think South Carolina probably wins, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, because they are just they're monsters. They're undefeated. I don't know if that's happened with. I'm imagining that's probably happened within college basketball with UConn at some point. But it's definitely going to be a good game that I think South Carolina, I do think that they may win. I want Iowa to win because I want Caitlin Clark to get that title. But Rich, I'll kick it to you here. Overall, how do you think Topps has done with this NIL sort of landscape from this March Madness?
I think they've done just fine. I think one of the things we have to remember is you have a very tight time frame from March Madness. Right. You have a baseball season. It goes 6 months for the regular season. Then you have another month for the playoffs. You have a football season that goes 4 months, and you have another month for the playoffs. Basketball and hockey goes 6 months, with a couple months for the playoffs. So you have time frames to do things. In March Madness, you have basically a month when people are really paying attention. Caitlin Clark has been an exception this year. People have paid attention to her the whole year. And there's, you're a UConn fan, Paige, and I can never pronounce her name. I know you've had discussions.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on.
We'll just call her Paige.
Yeah,
we'll call her Paige because I have a niece named Paige. It's a lot easier. And we'll call her Paige. Paige is a very great player as well. Iowa beat LSU. All the stuff swirling around Kim Mulkey, but yet Angel Reese and all those people, they played a pretty good game themselves. I mean, this is the first year where women's basketball has probably outstripped men's college basketball in terms of fan interest. I mean, and so we're seeing a changing in things, which is a good thing. It's a very good thing. It's a very good thing for all concerned. Topps is capitalizing as any good business should. You prep, but you have a very limited time frame because in the NCAA men's, you have teams that make miracle runs. You have North Carolina State. They've had to survive in advance now for, I believe, 11 straight games.
Yeah, it's really wild.
It's really wild. It's 1983 all over again for NC State. So, whether or not they go all the way is another subject. They're an 11 seed. They're in the Final Four. But the two DJs, and I was reading about them this morning in Sportico, they've done a great job in getting NIL things done on a very tight time frame. Some of it was prepped already that, hey, if we go far, we've got you set up. And that's the thing. So kudos to Topps for doing a good, Topps say they don't do everything right at Fanatics. And we tell them when we tell them on the show when we don't think they did something right. But between what they've done, they made sure to do we'll call it a farewell Caitlin Clark set before she goes to Panini. It's like $875, but you're getting signed cards, you're getting memorabilia, you're getting all sorts of stuff. Kudos to Fanatics, Topps, and also what they did with Bo Spencer Thompson. They're doing things right. And I'll talk about later something that they should also do right, but that's a different subject that they have not yet done right. But it's something I'm all in favor. You have Bowman, you have this thing, get it done. They're getting it done. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think obviously the women's cards, I think, have been maybe more of a focal point of what Topps has done this March Madness, which I think is actually, I think that's a good thing. And I think the interesting thing about those cards is that, like, when it comes to rookie cards, just in general, like if there are potential NBA players that are playing, like eventually they're going to have, they're going to have, hundreds of different cards. With the women's cards right now, there's only like 2 sets for them. I think that they have there's the Bowman set, and then I think they do either a Bowman's Finest or they do another Bowman set with college athletes. And so for the men, shifting a little bit, I haven't really been, I mean, and again, this maybe I use social media and maybe some of the stuff that pops up, I don't see everything necessarily, but I haven't really seen any men's sets really that have popped up at all. And I don't know if Topps is waiting to do some sort of thing after March Madness or what exactly they're looking to do. But I think capitalizing on the popularity of March Madness, I think, is a strategy that, for myself at least, that I've talked about kind of at length of trying to figure out how to get, whoever, Purdue, for example, like Zach Edey is like, he may go on to be good in the NBA. We don't really know. I mean, you look at a player like Luka Garza, who was the National Player of the Year for Iowa for the men's side for, I think it was like 2021. And he just signed like a 10-day G League contract. So it's like, it's interesting how in some cases the college game doesn't translate. But when you have players that are going to be going into the draft too, and just also one other thing to point out for the women's side, the women's and the WNBA draft happens like a few weeks after March Madness is over. Like I believe it happens it's either the first week in May, or I believe it's the first week, or at some point in May is when that WNBA draft happens. So it's like these, players like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and whoever else is, because Angel Reese also, shout out to her, she declared for the WNBA draft. They're going to be, they're playing right now for their college teams. In a month, they're going to be professionals. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that draft. I mean, I think at this point, it's pretty much consensus that Caitlin Clark is going to go number 1 overall. I think, she has played probably, I think her run, if Iowa wins, that will probably be, in my opinion, it'll be, which granted, I don't have as much history about it, but I think it's got to be one of the more historic runs throughout March Madness, with the level of teams that they had to play to get to this point. It's like to play LSU and then to play UConn, like LSU and UConn. The 4 top teams, in my opinion, this year were LSU, UConn, USC, and South Carolina. So if Iowa can win, and if Caitlin Clark, like I said, if Caitlin Clark goes on and has like a crazy, game in the national championship, that would be very interesting. But, again, like Horatio was saying too, it's like, be careful with these cards. I think, with Caitlin Clark, for example, there are a lot of cards. It may seem like there's a lot of cards, but if you really were to compare her to maybe some other prospects, the number is really not as significant, which I think is very interesting. That's not to say go out and buy all of the cards that you can, especially with the tops now. We've really seen the hobby not exactly take super kindly to tops now cards necessarily. But when it comes to the men's side, like I said, I haven't really seen too many sets. So Rich, I'll start with you on the men's side. Is the men, like, do you think that they need to come out with more sets just in general during this time period for men's and women's basketball?
Okay.
Or like, what are your kind of overall thoughts on that?
Well, first I looked it up while you were on your Hobby News Daily thing that you can run on Monday. That the WNBA draft is actually 1 week, is basically 9 days from today. It is it's April 15th, right in time for taxes.
It's even sooner than I thought.
Right, and that makes sense because they play in the summer. You've got to get your team set up so that they have to do the draft sooner, a couple months before the season begins. I think back in the day, there were a lot of college team sets. Not every college, but there were more college team sets than you realize in the overproduced, or what some people call the junk wax era. There were a ton of. I think the more sets you can produce, the better off you are, because even if they just sell regionally where the college plays or in the general area the college plays, or if you can do a combination like in Philadelphia, the Big Five in Philly, or the New York, New Jersey, what once upon a time they called it the New York, New Jersey 7. But, the cards in the New York City metropolitan area, the St. John's, the Seton Halls, all those people, you make combination sets. You do the Boston set. You do maybe a Big East set. You do a Big Ten set, the ACC set. Big East still does count in basketball. They don't count in Power 5 football.
Right.
But the more cards you can contractually make, and it doesn't cost you that much to get most of the players. I mean, I guarantee you that the players sitting, and I'm going to do a side digression here. Bronny James has done something which may be unique at this point. Yeah. He's declared for the NBA draft. He's also declared into the transfer portal.
Right.
Maybe. Yeah. And honestly, I don't think Bronny is going to get drafted. Or if he is drafted, it's a second round flyer where you really don't have to guarantee his contract.
Yeah, so I mean, with him, it's like you're just trying to get LeBron basically. If you're
if
you're drafting Bronny, like he's not good enough, really. Like he's not in the top. He's not a top 60 player to realistically be drafted, but the potential to get LeBron there, that's what you're really looking for. Because LeBron has even said that he would take the option. He would take the option, go to free agency, and sign with the team if they get Bronny. So I don't know. It really seems pretty odd to me. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Rich. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
So no, that's fine, and that's perfectly fine. And my point is that the more cards we have, the more publicity we have for college players all during the year leading into March Madness is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Again, the more cards that are out there is a good thing. There's Rex. Thank you as always for posting. And I saw Mike Petty posting that we're also on the big screen in his stores. So we appreciate that as well. And that Bowman U's been a strong seller, showing you have a market for college players, because not everyone's going to make the NBA. But if you buy somebody that develops, that might be a prospect, and that does happen in college sports, where people move up the draft boards as the season goes on. Wait a second, this person wasn't supposed to. Oh, now he's a lottery pick, or she's a lottery pick.
Right.
Okay, there you go. So there's prospecting, and as we know, prospecting drives the Bowman Chrome market, but it drives some other things too. And I'm not trying to say investing, but prospecting is something that I think we all enjoy. Hey, I knew this player before they became famous.
Right.
You know,
Totally.
I knew so and so. I was collecting the Super cards when she was at UConn back in the day, and she became a WNBA icon, or Diana Taurasi.
Right.
So things like that. So I think they're doing good, and we'll leave it at that.
Yep. And then so Horatio, one for the men's side, or men's and women's, I suppose. But do you think that they need to expand the amount of products they're doing for college cards, or do you think that what they're doing now is kind of maybe keeping it sort of limited with really like only 2 sets? Do you think that's the right way to go, or do you think that they should expand the amount of sets that they're doing within college?
Yeah, 2 things, because you mentioned the women's game. So I think number one, the one thing that's kind of a sidebar, but I will answer the question, is I think Topps has proven that there is a market for, in this case, at least for women's basketball. And I mean, that's always been true. We forget about the crazy UConn-Tennessee rivalries from, decades ago, when Tennessee and the UConn were at the top of their game. And so I think, at the national, I mean, and I know it's a topic we've discussed before, like it's a no-brainer to bring in some of these women athletes as signers. Like what if could you imagine the line to get Caitlin Clark's autograph at the national, or
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, Angel Reese was at the national too, which was really cool.
Angel, yeah. I mean, it'd be, but like to be like an official sign. I don't know what to make them a headliner, right?
Right.
Because I don't know if there were headliners at last year's national. So there is a market. The second thing is in terms of like the product. I think touching on what Rich said, a regional product. So, and I know there's been some mixed reviews about this company, but Onit ONIT athlete, and so they produce cards of teams, from every team. I'm sorry, every player on the team. They include women's teams like women's lacrosse, women's soccer, gymnastics, and they produce cards of every single player on the team. So like if it's a football team, including the walk-ons, they produce cards of the walk-ons, and they've been doing this for a couple of years. So and they've proven that there is a market, especially if you're regionalized. Like if you're a collector, right? If you're a fan of, they're based out of Boise. So if you're a fan of Boise State football, there's a strong demand for collecting those cards, collecting the whole team set, right? 130 guys, 140 players. So I think like Rich said, I mean, there's a market there. I won't say the problem, Bowman U is limited, right? They only include 2 or 3 athletes, depending on the program of each team. And roughly around there, right? It depends on the team. So why not expand it? Why not include more players? And like Rich said, hey, maybe you hit, on some player, some unknown player that 4 or 5 years down the road makes it, or makes a big shot somewhere, and it's just a fun thing to do. Again, it's a collecting thing. I wouldn't necessarily go there as an investor.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And then, so actually, Horatio, I'll ask you one more question, and then I'll go back to Rich and ask maybe a similar question. Do you think that, based on these past couple of years, that Topps has shown that there's a market for men's and women's products individually, or do you think that they should keep them together, and maybe just expand the size or the amount of athletes that are in the products? Or, like I said, do you think that they should be kind of taking the 2 and making their own products? Or
there's a market for anything. Having said that, I think you begin by combining the men's and the women's. Mm-hmm. But as you get more players signed, and as you see what happens, and I mean, and granted, this year Caitlin Clark's been as I've stated, she's a transcendent figure. So it's been something. She's what, when I was growing up, Pete Maravich was. I'm thinking back. Could you imagine if LSU had Pete Maravich cards in the late 60s, when he was averaging 40 points a game and setting records in only 3 years? And in his very first exhibition game, Wide World of Sports made sure to cover it live because ABC had the NBA contract.
Right.
Caitlin Clark is the Pete Maravich of her time. And that's not a knock on Caitlin Clark. She has just brought a flair to the game that nobody else had at this point.
Right.
And,
Yeah, Horatio. Sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
And no, go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Horatio, same kind of question for you before we move on to our next topic here.
Just real quick, I think that women's basketball has proven, and I agree with Rich. I think it's good that they're mixing it. I think women's basketball has proven that it can have its separate product. We're quick to forget, but Caitlin Clark, but Sabrina Ionescu was a huge name just a couple of years ago, and she still is, right? And she made headlines. People were grabbing her stuff, NFTs. She came out during that whole NFT craze. We've had a bunch of great women's basketball superstars. And real quick, I remember about 15 years ago, I could watch a courtside WNBA game in Newark, New Jersey for $50. Okay, I could sit down and feel like a rock star watching the greatest women's basketball players play in front of me. Now, fast forward 15 years later, those $50 tickets are now, they're going for $600-700 a game a night. Right?
Yeah, totally.
The game has grown.
I could especially there too, I would imagine.
I mean, yeah, right. I mean, I'm talking about my experience. You're right. I don't know what it's going to be like in Indiana, but
right.
But the product is there. It's proven. It's a national brand. The WNBA is a national brand, and you really start, especially when you start at the college level. I mean, it's impressive.
Right. Totally.
And I will say, Sabrina made the news this week. She brought sneakers to the Final Four. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, Sabrina brought sneakers to the players for the Final Four.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. I think I saw that they're also going to, because this year was the first year that they did like that 3-point contest with Sabrina and Curry. And I guess next year, apparently the rumors are they're going to expand it. It's maybe going to be Klay Thompson, and then they'll maybe add Caitlin Clark in there. I mean, I think that's a great way. And I mean, I just so my last point here before we move on to a different topic is like, just in general, like women's basketball, like it's in the infancy of its actual league. Like, so the league itself is only 25, less than 30 years old. So it's like, if you think about it, 10 years ago, there really wasn't an avenue for players to go pro. And especially now with NIL, it's like there was no avenue to go pro. So I think we're going to see a lot. And not to say that anybody was a bad athlete, because I couldn't be less athletic if I tried, but like we're seeing much better athletes at a younger age look at the WNBA and say, oh, this is actually a possibility for me to go there and play now. So they're going to focus on basketball, where maybe in the past they just gave up on it because there was no avenue. It was like the Olympics were really the only thing. Or there was the WNBA, but it wasn't really financially, no one was financially able to be like a WNBA player, and that was it. So I think, like you said,
in the late 1970s, there was a league called the WBL, the Women's Basketball League.
Mm-hmm.
It folded in about 2 seasons.
Right.
And it had all the big name players of the time. It had your Nancy Lieberman Kleins. It had your Ann Myers Drysdale. It had, and if I'm missing somebody and I get a slight fact wrong, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, the WNBA, by being partially founded by the NBA, made it a successful thing. Right. And I see, Adam, you're ready for your next thing, so let's just get there.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was pulling it up, and I didn't think it was going to pull up on the screen. I thought I had to click another thing to pull it up on the screen. Sorry about that. I was just trying to get everything ready. But okay, so sorry. We are going to move on to the next topic here. So basically, apparently there was some controversy, or I don't know, surrounding the Otani first home run ball. I guess there was some offer that was put in or something along those lines. I mean, I'm actually not 100% sure totally what happened here. Rich or Horatio, have either of you guys looked into this at all and seen what has happened? Horatio, looks like you have, so I'll kick it to you first. Kind of what are your thoughts on this, I suppose?
Well, Rich updated me this morning, about how the Dodgers are making it good, but I don't know if people have read the story. The husband and wife caught Shohei's first home run as a Dodger. And basically the Dodgers kind of forced their hand and said, you got to make a decision right now. Give us the ball or you get nothing or whatever. And they felt like they were kind of, rushed into the decision, kind of tricked into handing the ball over. And in return, they initially got 2 signed caps there. You see the picture, right? The baseball and the baseball bat. Now, what's funny to me is that reports are saying that the ball could have gone for $100,000, and the first person that I saw quote that was Ken Golden. That's going from Ken Golden, so take that with a grain of salt. And the reason I say that is because I contrasted this to the guy that caught Aaron Judge's 60-second home run ball, and when he caught that ball, the Rangers, because he caught it in Texas, they were very respectful of the process, right? They let him take his time and all that. He had a $3 million offer to sell, a private offer, but he got, he was told he might get more by Golden, and it ended up selling for 1.5 for half of that. So that's kind of a sidebar. So I don't know that the ball's worth $100,000, and that's not really the point. Maybe the ball's worth 30,000, 20,000, who knows, right? But the Dodgers didn't treat those fans very well, and they are about to they're going to make it right. They're going to give them an experience and all that. Otani said that he met them, that they handed him the ball. When it was found out that wasn't true, they said, we never met Otani. We never even got to meet him. So the Dodgers, being the brand that they are, because they're entrenched in Los Angeles. I mean, they're one of the iconic brands of MLB. They're doing the right thing by making it right. So,
right, yeah, it is such a crazy thing where it's just like it happens all so quickly too. Where it's like you catch the home run. I don't know if you guys saw this, but like over. I think it was during the World Baseball Classic. This was really cool. I thought like Otani, when he was playing I think he was playing in the Tokyo Dome for Japan during the World Baseball Classic. Somebody caught the home run ball, and then they just like passed. And this is also, now that I'm saying it out loud, this is a story that I saw on Twitter, so I don't know how 100% accurate this is, but they like passed around the ball, and then somehow the person that caught it ended up with the ball. So I just thought that was kind of a cool story where that would never happen here in the States. But at the same time, now that I'm saying it out loud, maybe it's a little bit unrealistic that actually happened. But either way, so Rich, I'll kick it to you here. Kind of what are your initial thoughts on the story?
Well, I say this frequently. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking. Dodgers failed the smell test.
Yeah.
Whether it happened, in today's world with all the cell phones, you can see it happening. You see her with the ball. The husband said they forced them to separate. So the husband wasn't even there, and they pressured, according to what he said. And I mean, he's got no reason not to believe his wife. We obviously don't know what happened, but as you said, the Rangers, my hometown team here in Dallas, they did the right thing by the fan. By the way, the fan who caught it was a very fairly successful person, and he could basically take his sweet time to make. He knew where he was going. So I mean, he was a little more, let's say, savvy towards all these financial things. And 1.5 million may not be 3 million, but that's not bad either.
Right.
Also, It wasn't just Ken Golden saying $100,000, but the newspaper, I call it the newspaper articles I read, said Chris Ivey, the director of Heritage Auctions for Sports Collectibles, also said $100K. So we have two people saying $100K, both of whom probably are the two of the major, and there's a couple others, but two of the major sports collectible auction houses, probably the two biggest, but there are a couple others that are close, auction houses in the country, for sports cards and memorabilia. So if they're both saying it's $100K, I think we got a pretty good idea it's $100K.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is a question. I'll start with you, Rich, and I'll ask you, Horatio, the same question. It's like, how do you feel about auction houses coming out and saying that something is worth a certain amount? Like, there was a Babe Ruth card, I believe, that sold probably like 6 months ago at this point, but there were tons of articles that were written about this card, that it was supposed to break all these records and it was going to be the most expensive sports card, and then it came in like $10 million below what people were saying it was going to sell for, which is insane. So like, $100,000 in theory sounds low in my opinion. I mean, or it seems reasonable if I'm going to I'll put it that way. So, Rich, I'll ask you this, like, why, like, what do you think about auction houses and just in general, like the valuation of cards and, this ball, I think, especially like from places where it's going to be sold, like potentially.
Well, auction houses do their best.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go to Heritage because they're local and I have something and I don't know what it is, we know it's good, they're going to give me a guesstimation of what they think it's going to go for. So that is something auction houses have to do on a daily basis. So it's okay for Chris and for Ken to say $100,000. As that's the type of item they're going to be the ones personally dealing with. And if that's their belief what it's going to sell for, it may or may not be right, but I'm fine with that based on what they have to do as a company. I had a friend of mine who visited me for lunch yesterday, and he's starting to work on what he wants to keep and what he wants to get rid of, and what when he passes, what he's want his wife to do. And he said, okay, well, when that time comes, you're 56 and you're 57 and you're 58 set can go to Heritage, and we can and they'll give you what the guesstimation based on real life experience what it's going to go for. But I said your few hundred duplicate commons of 50s and 60s, that's not going to Heritage. That's just going, and we have a mutual friend that'll go to him, and he'll put it up for sale, and he'll get rid of those in one shot. But that's the type of thing an auction house has to do all the time. Right. So I don't have a real problem with what they're saying. Plus, they're trying to hype their business, and you don't want to come too high or too low, but it happens. I tell the story because it's in New York Magazine in 1991. They called me when the now $10 million plus PSA 8 Wagner, owned by Ken Kendrick of the Arizona Diamondbacks, was up in the Copeland auction. And I blithely said, because the market was like 100,000, it should go for 150 to 200,000. Okay, that's on paper. I still have the press clipping.
Right, yeah.
$451,000 later, it sold. I was off by 300,000. I do not do guesstimations after that.
Right, yeah.
But the point is, that is their job to do guesstimations.
Right.
It's not my job.
Yeah, right, yeah. Horatio, I'll ask you the same question here. Like, what do you think of, like you said, Ken Golden saying that this is worth $100,000, but then he's, I guess maybe he doesn't own all of Golden Auctions anymore, but it's like, if that's where the ball goes and, the owner, the company that the person's there, or the company that's named after this person that's saying it's worth a certain amount is saying $100,000. What are kind of your overall thoughts on, like, if companies should be really evaluating assets this way, like with whether it's sports cards or whether it's a ball like this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any issue with Ken Golden coming out and saying what he thinks it might be worth. Like that's like Rich said, that's his job. I guess my thing is I'd take it with a grain of salt. There's there's a bunch of variables involved there, and so when the media is going to use your numbers, and it's not just Ken Golden, like Rich pointed out, Chris Ivey from Heritage Auctions also said that. But when the media is going to use that figure, we got to be careful, right? Because, again, this, and if you read this tweet, it says worth at least $100,000. I mean, and I don't know that Shohei Otani's first home run ball as a Dodger. I mean, I'm not an expert, so I don't want to say, but is it really worth at least $100,000? I mean, what are you basing this off of? Is my question. And so the media is going to take off with it. And this couple that wasn't, going back to the story, like this couple that wasn't treated very well, it seems like they were cheated out of $100,000. Where I think the bigger problem is the way they were treated. Maybe if they had taken this ball and sold it off at auction, who knows what they would have gotten? That's my point. Who knows? And maybe it could have been $100,000. But there's different ways of framing it, right? And I think ultimately it's like the Dodgers treated these fans horribly, and they sort of should make up for it, in some way, and not necessarily $100,000 worth of makeup, but just like, hey, like we love our fans, we respect our fans, and they're going to give them an on-field experience, a VIP package, and all that. Give them something equivalent to $100K in an experience. You know what I'm saying? Like worth of an experience. That kind of thing you don't put a price tag on, right? Like getting to be in the dugout, something that Bo Thompson did with the Cubs, how they treated him, right? Getting to throw out the first pitch, meeting all these players. That's priceless, and I don't know their financial standings. Maybe they'd rather take the $100K or the $50K or the $30K, whatever it is. I know Golden and other auction houses have come up and said, this is going to sell for this and this, and they fell well short, especially in recent years, like the last year and a half. And so my point is I'd be careful using those figures to kind of frame this story.
Right. And I think it's actually so wild within our industry, just, memorabilia, whether it's sports cards or memorabilia. I just think it is it's very interesting that like we can look here and say this thing could be worth $100,000 and we're just like it's not that we're not like poo-pooing it, but at the same time it's like it's pretty wild how like our industry has grown to a point where it's like things selling for $100,000 that almost happens once a week or a couple times a week depending on what the auction is that's selling through, whether it's PWCC or Golden or eBay. So it's like this $100,000 number again. Also you got to look at it too, it's like it's very easy to write headlines about something that's worth $100,000 to either round up or round down or however you want to look at it. It's very easy, I think, to look. It's very easy to write an article and say something's worth a certain amount, and then get whether you are a blog or you're a content creator or something along those lines. I think like it's very easy to. It's a very round number. I think is one way to look at it. And it's very easy to put into a headline and say this thing's worth, $100,000, whatever it may be. But so we are actually going to be switching over to our last topic of the day, kind of similar to the March Madness stuff in a way, I suppose. Going to be talking about a card has been listed or will be listed up for auction through PWCC. So presumably, probably Rookie of the Year, Wemby lived up to expectations so far, at least. One of the one of ones. I mean, I know that there are like 4 or 5 different one of ones that are all the same card. And I know I've gone on my rants and raved about how I don't really love that there are so many one of ones. But the question that I actually have about this card that I'm going to ask both of you guys is, do you think so? And we're kind of looking at a short window here of players that are going to have first Bowmans, and then they're going to have Prism rookie cards, which will only be another year or two for Prism rookie cards. Where do you think how would you rank the Bowman, the first Bowman? Rich, I'll start with you. How would you rank the first Bowman rookie card versus like the Prism rookie card? And ultimately, in the long run, which one do you think is going to be the one that people say this is the card that you want to buy if you're trying to buy a Wembanyama?
My best guess, and that's all it is, it will be anything Panini does because he's in a Spurs uniform.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably where I'm going, but by the time it's decided and I'm long dead and gone, it may be totally different. But I think at least for the next few years, as long as people have institutional memories of Panini, remember they're still producing cards for another couple years with the WNBA. But 10, 15 years from now, when they're not producing WNBA cards anymore, that might change, and people might say, hey, Fanatics has been doing this now, and they've done it on and off since 1958. Let's make the Bowman card the key card. So short term, I think the Panini card. Long term, I think it may be the Topps card, only because, and when I say Topps, that means Bowman. Long term, I say that because by then they'll have the institutional faculties to be the main card manufacturer again for the NBA. So it's whatever you prefer. I mean, and that's true of the whole hobby. So I know that sounds wishy-washy because I can't give you a straight answer because I'll be like you, Adam. On the one hand, as Tevye used to say in Fiddler on the Roof, and on the other hand.
Right.
But right now, I'd be buying the Prism card if I had that type of scratch.
Mm-hmm. Horatio, same question to you. Which one do you think it's going to be in the, I guess maybe short term and long term? Where do you think the cards will rank? And do you think we're going to see a shift between, like I said, it's going to be only a short period of time, like only a 2 or 3 year period where players are going to have those first Bowman cards, and then they're also going to have potentially a Prism rookie card. So ultimately, it may even be just like an asterisk type of era where we don't really know what maybe they're the same price. I don't really know. So what are your kind of overall initial thoughts on like the Bowman versus the Prism card?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna, again, I have no idea. By the way, this card is being said that on PWCC it's going to go for $80,000. So I'm kind of curious to see where it ends up. Mm-hmm. Since we're talking about predictions. I'm going to go with Rich. I think Prism is the buy here. To me, Prism is like an iconic, sort of brand for modern day cards. And I don't know too much about the Bowman product, right? But the Prism cards, basketball cards, have such a distinct look and they've been sort of in the collector's psyche for the last 10 to 15 years, and they've produced some iconic sets as well. That I think that the buy here is the Prism. That's kind of my take on this.
Yeah. I think I'm in a very similar boat here. I think right now it's definitely Prism. I think down the road there will be an interesting. I think there'll be some interest in that Bowman card, because people will be like, well, why is there a card from 2021, 2022 that's older than this Prism card, and why is it Bowman and this one's Panini? I think it's going to be very interesting, and we definitely have gotten to a point where there are a lot more articles and a lot more information about cards, which, like, back in the day when I was doing research on certain players, I was like, I couldn't figure out why things were a certain way, and why things like why this one card was worth more and why this one card wasn't. So Rich, I'll actually ask you this question. When it comes to one of ones, do you, and this is maybe, it may actually be just a yes or no question. I don't know if you know this or not, but do you know why the regular black one of one is like the most valuable of the, I don't know, 5 different one of ones? Like, is there a specific reason, or is it just like the hobby has just determined that is like the card, I guess?
Well, I have no idea. I mean, when they have that many one of ones, this is black shimmer. If there's a black Prism that's one of one that doesn't have any of the funky stuff around, it's probably a little better, only because it seems to be I'm going to use the word cleaner card. That's not the right verbiage. But you don't have it. It just seems more like a parallel of the regular card, where this is a parallel, but it's got other stuff added. And to me, the simpler you do things, you want some complexity, but in some ways, the simpler the hobby is, the better. And in some ways, you want simplicity with complexity. And I know that sounds like a contradiction, but people collect cards from the 50s and 60s.
Right.
But the complexion is, some cards are tougher than others. Sometimes there's variations that you discover years later that pop up, like Vito 59 Tops Valentelli has no colon and a colon by his birthday. Okay, that's fine. It's a 50-50, but that just adds to your little complexity. 59 Tops also has white and gray backs in the 3rd series. Adds to the complexity. Do you want to just get one card, or do you want a master set?
Right.
So it's simplicity with complexity.
Gotcha.
And that sounds like a math term, and I'm not that good at math. I'm barely that good in English. To me, that's what it is. But I think it also depends how the card looks.
Yeah, and it looks like we may have an answer. And this is what I was thinking when I was initially kind of racking my brain, was just that the Black Prism was the first of the original, print run one of ones. So that's basically why. And so Horatio, I'll kick it to you with kind of wrapping up the show here a little bit. But what do you think that Panini is going to do? I guess it's already in motion. Everything's already in motion this year specifically. But since Topps has that exclusive with Wembanyama, like, Horatio, what do you think is gonna, like, what do you think Panini may try and do this year to keep? I don't know. I mean, there's not going to be any. There's not going to be any one of ones. There's not going to be any Logo Man RPAs. Like, how do you think Panini is going to try and bounce back from not having such a big name autograph, like the biggest name in rookies for basketball this year? How do you think Panini is going to try and bounce back from not having any autographs or like RPAs in any of their products this year? It's a loaded question, I know, but it's just, and it's also maybe just a prediction, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that.
They're going to have to branch. I don't know if you're referring specifically to the NBA cards. But I think what they're doing, and you see it, and this is just tying it back, and I don't want to keep going back, but they signed an exclusive with Caitlin Clark, right? So they're kind of expanding their base. They're kind of planning for the future. And so I think that's what they're doing. I think they see the writing on the wall, and they're making like these these alternative plans and going for which demographics can they kind of go after that they can maybe corner that market, right? So that's kind of what I can say. It's a big miss, right? Same thing with the football cards, with CJ Stroud and a couple of the other guys that signed exclusives. You have to kind of just get creative and come up with these one of ones, and see and make those the chase cards. Yeah,
I do think that having Caitlin Clark having her sign that exclusive with Panini is, I mean, I think that would have been maybe the nail in the coffin when it came to like Panini really just kind of being like, all right, well, there's literally nothing we can do here, because, they'll have Prism cards with Caitlin Clark autographs or however many women's products they plan on coming out with. They're going to have those Caitlin Clark autographs, which I think is, like I said, if they didn't, I think that would have been a nail in the coffin. Like we really could have probably wrapped things up for that company sooner rather than later. As we come up to the top of the hour here, I think we're going to wrap up the show. I think let me just grab this off the screen here, and we will do our final messages for the audience here. Rich, I'll throw it to you first. What do you got coming up this week? Anything you want to promote? What do you got to say to the audience as we head out here?
I got a couple of things I want to promote. One of our fellow Hobby Hotline hosts, Chris Carlin, because we mentioned in our group chat that Serena Williams' husband, happens to be a card collector. And the next PSA magazine is doing a feature on his Serena collection. But he doesn't just collect Serena. He's got a closet full of baseball cards. He's got so many baseball cards in his closet, he has to move clothes out of it. He's just like us.
Yeah.
He's just worth a little more money.
Right.
And
founded Reddit. Has a little bit more money. Yeah, I would say that's probably true.
And the other thing, I do want to take a little time here. I looked at the list of the 10 hobbyists in the new big league product. I knew exactly 2 of them. One was Jeff Wilson, who has opened a massive new store. And his store is definitely one of the things Fanatics wants, when possible, stores to be like. And the other was the Jabs family, only because one of my friends watches his videos. And he's been a lot more gracious than I've been in when I've posted on his Facebook page and his Instagram page and all of that about it. But how the hell do you not have a Rob Veras card in Big League? Rob Veras has 40 some odd million cards in his store. With his son Ryan, they have re-engineered the Burbank card store. It is a modern card store. There are people there every day. Rob's had the store now by himself for 35 years, been there for 45 years. This is a big miss by Fanatics. This is because Rob is the best of the old and the new. And I see Rex is in the chat. And I see Mike Petty's in the chat. People like that who help the hobby on a day-to-day basis, they may not be influencers on the way they have huge social media platforms, but they've influenced a lot more collectors just by their day-to-day attention to what's going on in the hobby. And I think those are big misses by Rob Veras owns Burbank Sports Cards, by the way. He has 40 million cards in his store. He and his store are also corporate sponsors of Dr. Beckett's podcast. And, Dr. Jim is one of our co-hosts as well. So I am keeping it in the family. And if you don't know Rob, you don't know somebody who has lived the hobby.
Yeah.
And as I said, he's done it every day. And it's very frustrating for me to see. And I looked at this as I knew 2 of those names, and I'm thinking, this hobby's passed me by. But it really hasn't, but it has.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm hoping, like I said, when I've covered that a little bit, I hope that they do expand that a little bit more. And I mean, I think the kind of the point of it is maybe to, promote people that don't exactly know who they are. I mean, I guess in theory, customers of the people, because a lot of the people on that checklist were breakers. So you're promoting kind of breaking, and that's obviously I think that's something that Fanatics has definitely tried to do. Yeah, I mean, I hope they expand that. I'll kick it to you, Horatio. Do you have anything you're promoting? Anything you got going on this week? Some last words for the audience.
Yeah, to the 40 of you watching, that's 40 more than I'm used to talking to. So thank you for being a part of the show and commenting and everything. It's great to have you guys as a community. I'm getting familiar with some of your names, so thank you for being here. Between the earthquake that I experienced yesterday in New York City, the eclipse on Monday, just stay safe out there. Tune into last week. We did a Hobby News Daily, 1 year anniversary. I want to shout that out. I got an article coming out on Monday. I kind of have an idea of what I'm writing about, but check it out. A lot of great content there. And just thank you guys for being around this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if anyone follows, what's it called? The like moons and stuff like that. Mercury is in retrograde for another couple weeks. I sort of follow it a little bit. That just means chaos is going to be happening all around us. That's pretty much what that means, at least from what I've seen, it's until the 14th of April. So if just stay inside and look at your cards. Honestly, just don't even try going outside, because you never know what could happen. You might just get stuck in an earthquake. You never really know. But like I try to say on a lot of these episodes, just new people coming in. Fanatics, their plan is to grow the hobby. So as content creators, I think it's our responsibility to try and help with the knowledge and get people involved, because at some point, this is what I always say, at some point, new people coming in are exactly where we were at some point in our careers within sports cards. So just helping those people out and making sure they are having a good time is definitely going to be important. Everyone, we will be back here next week, our regular time, 11 a.m. Eastern, which would be what time would that be?
10 Central, 9
10
Mountain,
Central,
8
8 Pacific. Yeah. So either way, we'll be back here on the YouTube channel. Shout out to Bench Clear Media for hosting our show. Want to give everybody a shout out in the chat as well. Thank you. Also, if you're listening, make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. Do all the liking and subscribing everywhere else as well. Thank you all for listening and watching to the show. We will see you next week.